So let's talk about something that, let's be honest, touches pretty much all of us, workplace stress. And we're not just talking about having a tough day. This is a huge health and safety issue with some really serious legal and financial consequences. So how big is this problem really? What are companies legally required to do about it? And, how can we actually create a workplace that supports people instead of burning them out? Let's dive in. Okay, so before we even think about solutions, we've got to get our heads around the sheer scale of the problem. And I'm telling you, the numbers are genuinely staggering. They show exactly why this isn't some soft issue. It's a full-blown crisis, and it's more urgent than ever. Just look at that number, nearly 1 million people in a single year. And this isn't just a statistic on a spreadsheet, right? We're talking about real people. The data is crystal clear. Work-related stress is the #1 cause of ill health in the workplace today. And the really scary part? That number keeps going up. And all that individual suffering, well, it creates this massive ripple effect. Over 40 million working days lost. Just wrap your head around that for a second. That is an enormous strain on businesses, on our economy, and on the coworkers who are left trying to pick up the slack. It's a flashing red light that the way we're working just isn't working. And if you want to talk money, the cost is almost unbelievable. We're talking nearly £23 billion. That's the annual dent in the British economy. A number that big makes it pretty clear that managing stress isn't just a nice-to-have perk, it's an absolute economic necessity. But we can't get lost in all these big numbers, because behind every single one, every lost workday, every pound spent, there are people. The impact on them is profound, and it doesn't just stop with them. It affects their families, their friends, their entire communities. So when you're facing a problem this huge, what's the right response? Well, it turns out it's not just a suggestion. It's a legal obligation. Let's get into the specifics of what the law actually says employers have to do about mental health at work. This right here is the cornerstone. It's the Health and Safety at Work Act from 1974. It couldn't be clearer. Employers have a legal duty to protect their workers, and that includes their mental health just as much as their physical health. The key takeaway is that this is not optional. The same way you'd have to assess the risk of someone slipping on wet floor, you are legally required to assess the risks that cause work-related stress. So what exactly are we supposed to be looking for? The official term is psychosocial hazards. Yeah, I know, it's a bit of a mouthful, but don't let the jargon fool you. This isn't about some vague feeling. It's about real, tangible problems in how work is designed. Things like crazy workloads, having no say in how you do your job, bad communication, or even bullying. These are the things that cause very real harm. And here's the game plan. It's not a one-and-done checklist. It's a continuous cycle. You start by figuring out what the risks are. Then you put measures in place to actually control them. But it doesn't stop there. You have to tell everyone what the plan is, you have to train your managers to make it happen, and you have to keep records. Not for the sake of it, but so you can spot trends and nip problems in the bud. Okay, so that's the legal what you have to do, but what about the practical how? How do you actually go about assessing and managing all these hazards effectively? Well, this is where the Health and Safety Executive, or HSE, gives us a really clear blueprint for action. You see, the HSE is the national regulator for workplace health and safety, and they've basically done the homework for us. They've developed this proven, step-by-step framework that's designed to help any organization find the real root causes of stress and build a much healthier place to work. And the whole thing really boils down to these 6 key areas of work design. They're called the management standards. Think of them like the 6 main levers you can pull to manage stress in a workplace: demands, control, support, relationships, role, and change. Get these 6 things right, and you're well on your way. Now, what's so brilliant about this approach is that it actually defines what good looks like. It turns these big ideas into real goals. So for demands, it's not about having zero work to do, of course. It's about making sure people feel they can actually cope with it. For control, it's about giving people a say. For relationships, it means making sure unacceptable behavior just isn't tolerated. It makes the whole thing measurable. But you might be wondering, does all this theory actually work in the real world? Well, the proof is in the pudding. Take Scottish Power. After they brought in the HSE's management standards, they saw a real, measurable 11% improvement in sickness absence related to stress. That's a huge win and concrete proof that this stuff works. So we've seen the big picture framework, but now let's bring it right down to the ground level. Because where the rubber really meets the road is with managers. They are the ones who turn a policy on a piece of paper into a reality for their teams every single day. If you're a manager, this might be the most important takeaway for you. Act early. Prevention is absolutely everything. The guidance is so clear. The moment you notice someone on your team is struggling, you need to talk to them. A simple, open, non-judgmental chat can literally be the most important step in stopping a bad situation from getting much, much worse. And that conversation often leads to this idea of making adjustments. It's a term we hear a lot, but what does a reasonable adjustment for mental health actually look like in the real world? What are we talking about here? Well, you'd be surprised how practical and flexible they can be. We're not always talking about huge, expensive changes. It can be anything from flexible hours or just more frequent breaks to paid time off for appointments, or even just moving someone's desk to a quieter spot. It could be changing their duties a bit or pairing them up with a mentor. The key thing is there's no one-size-fits-all solution. It's about finding what works for the individual. And of course, the kind of support someone needs really changes, doesn't it? What you do while they're off sick is very different from what you do when they're getting ready to come back. While they're away, it's all about reassurance, keeping in touch so they don't feel isolated. But when they return, it's about having a proper, structured plan to help them ease back in. Both parts are so important. So, when you pull all these threads together, what's the big takeaway? Well, the goal here isn't just about ticking boxes to stay on the right side of the law. It's about making a fundamental shift, moving away from just avoiding risk to actively building a culture of real psychological safety and care. And if you need any more proof of how seriously this is all being taken now, check this out. There's been a major update to official guidance. Employers now have to consider mental health as part of their first aid needs assessment. That's huge. It officially puts psychological health right up there on the same level as physical health. It's a real landmark step. And look, if the legal duty and the moral responsibility aren't enough to convince you, the business case is an absolute slam dunk. Remember that £23 billion cost? Well, this is the flip side. Taking real action on this stuff leads directly to less absence, higher productivity, happier staff who stick around, and a company people actually want to work for. It's not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. And that really brings us to the final and I think most important question. It's one for you to take back to your own workplace. Are you just going through the motions to avoid risks? Or are you genuinely, actively trying to build a culture where people feel psychologically safe, supported, and valued? Because at the end of the day, the answer to that question changes absolutely everything.